A pleasant and dignified moment, everyone. I am Riddle Alcantara, a student from De La Salle University, Manila. Welcome to the second part of our conversation about dignified menstruation with the topic Reglacion, a perspective on the Filipinos' relationship with menstruation. Good afternoon. Welcome, one and all, to Dignified Menstruation PH's talk entitled Conversation on Menstruation, the Filipina Perspective. Before we officially start this program, please share the link of this conversation to your friends and family and to anyone of the sorts. In partnership with JCI Perlas Pasay, the organization has invited esteemed guests from De La Salle University, Manila, in order to grant onto us their wisdom with regards to one of the ways where women empower themselves, menstruation. To start, Miss Mafe Pastorpide, Dignified Menstruation Philippine Chapter Head, will give her opening remarks.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in this conversation about menstruation. This is the second installment of our webinar for the women's in celebration of Women's Month, and we would like to welcome you in this project. This is a partnership between Dignified Menstruation PH, or the Philippine chapter of Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation from JCI Perlas Pasay, and our speakers from Ms. Ina from De La Salle University and her students, and of course from our reactors. So we would like to invite you to join us in this conversation. Comment your questions, your reactions while we are doing the live stream. And we hope that with this webinar, with this conversation, there will be more conversations that will come. So if you know, we are very happy to meet our researchers and our reactors. We in Dignified Menstruation PH is actually looking out for people, like-minded people, who have the passion to learn more about themselves and talk more about menstruation, because initially, or for some families or for some communities, these are silent topics, and we want to elevate this conversation because we want to learn from other people, from their experiences. And we hope that with this conversation, this is a start of a bigger partnership with our speakers. Welcome everyone, and hope you enjoy our activity today.
Thank you for opening the event with those very dignifying remarks. Without being said, let us introduce to you the speakers we have in store for this afternoon. Presenting the research paper entitled Bloodstained, a study on the menstrual experience of university students, please give a warm round of virtual applause for Jezebug Seat, an AB Literature major in creative writing, Lauren Chua, an AB Psychology student, Trixia Peña-Flor, an AB International Studies major in European Studies major, and Raya Sabandal, a BS Psychology second-year student. To all our viewers, let us make this conversation interactive. Please send your comments and questions to the Dignified Menstruation PH Facebook page. Ladies, you may now take the virtual floor.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I would like to introduce myself. I am Raisa Bandal, and sorry if I can't make it today due to prior commitment, but I'm here to discuss with you our objectives and scope and limitations of our study. So for objectives, it is in order to have a deeper understanding about the hygiene practices in today's changing time, wherein it benefits the community by providing insights from people about how women can use menstrual hygiene practices in order to maintain good menstrual hygiene. Second, to determine the gap between childhood and puberty among girls due to menarche, in which it is the common cause of girls having no proper knowledge on what to do and where to go. Thus, it can cause a problem that may result in bullying and even lack of self confidence. Speaking of bullying, we also believe that this study is not only significant for women but also for men. It is in order for them to be equally knowledgeable about menstruation and not consider it as a taboo topic. Lastly, it is for us to dedicate as an additional study about menstruation for the women in the Philippines. We, the researchers, found out that there are only few research studies regarding menstruation here in the Philippines. So it is also the reason why we decided to make this study. Hello. So for the scope and limitations of the study, this study aims to evaluate the knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors towards menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices of female public and private university students in Metro Manila. The researchers would like to assess the present needs of college women in the university and whether they are satisfied or not with the existing menstrual hygiene practices they have. Experiences from menarche will also be evaluated in the context of the preparedness of the women involved as well as the readiness of the people around them, if there are any. It is to focus also in the menstrual hygiene practices which are evident in the present time. It includes the use of napkins, tampons, menstrual cups, reusable pads, and others. Lastly, this study will not focus on the case of bullying and low self-esteem of the women in relation to menstruation and menarche. Moreover, men's view on menstruation and menstrual hygiene will not be addressed in the study due to the fact that this study is dedicated to women empowerment.
Thank you for that, Raya. And based from that, we crafted five research problems that we want to be solved after our study. First, we sought to know and understand the respondents' source of knowledge about menstruation and their menstrual hygiene practices. Then, we asked about their commonly held understanding on menstruation and menstrual hygiene. And now that we know the extent of their knowledge on the topic, we moved on asking about their attitudes toward menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices. When we say attitudes, it is more on how they view the topic, how they process the new information about their bodies that will change the way that they live their lives until they reach menopause. It basically refers to their positive and negative feelings about menstruation. Following on the reviews on menstruation, we inquired about their menstrual hygiene practices and how do they take care of the reproductive system. And lastly, we sought to see if there is a correlation between their knowledge and attitudes towards menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices to their menstrual experience. These questions did not only supply us valuable information and findings about young women's perceptions on menstruation, but also what influenced it and how they are handling it since they got their menarche. For our methodology, we had a sample of 21 students, 11 of which came from private university students like De La Salle University and De La Salle College of St. Benilde, as well as 10 public university students from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, all coming from varied courses. All of the respondents have ages ranging from 18 to 21 years old, and majority of them are Christian or Catholic, and only a small percentage of them are non-Christian or not adhering to Christian faith. From this, it can be said that we tried, to the best of our abilities, as senior high students at the time, to randomize our participants that would reflect a varied and unique response. For the interest of time, and to avoid getting too technical, in a nutshell, we used a qualitative evaluative research design. We opted to do a qualitative study instead of a quantitative one to highlight the various experiences of women because all women experience menarche and menstruation itself differently.
Okay, so for our interviewees came from different public and private universities here in Metro Manila. In particular, we interviewed students from College of St. Benilde, DLSU, and UP Diliman. And since we finished this podcast, we contacted several people we could invite, and luckily we were able to interview 21 respondents all in all. So as you can see here on screen, this is our interview questionnaire. This is heavily based on our research questions revolving around the knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors of menstruating college women, which were discussed by Jessa a while ago. In formulating these questions, of course, we consulted a research advisor and also an expert in the topic of menstruation. We also made sure to conduct a sample focus group discussion with our friends from senior high school to make sure that the questions are digestible and easy to understand. And from their suggestions and responses, we revised these questions before proceeding um, to interviewing the participants. Another thing that is a necessary document for our interviews were the informed consent forms, just so our interviewees know what the study is about and why we are collecting their data. It also states there that their participation is voluntary. So this also leads us to our practice of etiquette for research interviews. Of course, the data collected is stored properly and is only used for the study. And in the entire duration of the interview, we also made sure that we built rapport with the interviewees beforehand. So just so they were able to be comfortable and to trust us with the information and stories they will be sharing. So next slide. So here we can see one of the respondents focusing on the respondents' knowledge about menstruation. All of them were able to briefly explain what menstruation is, and regardless of their academic background, they were able to explain it the way they have observed their bodies or learned about it from school. And surprisingly, a lot of them actually explained it with the very technical definition of menstruation, which encapsulate it as a natural and biological process for women. So, so I'd like to highlight one of the responses we got because when asked about their views on trying out different alternative menstrual products, a lot of the students from UP were actually very curious about it and are open to try it, but their main concern is the availability of these products. One of them shared their sentiments, particularly regarding the reusable sanitary pads. She said, like tela lang yun na kung ano, tapos 80 pesos isang pad, parang hindi pa makatarungan, gusto mo ngang mag-save the earth, pero ang mahal ng mga gamit. And this is actually true. For one reusable pad, I remember in 2019, it was priced around 80 to 120 per pad. So, of course, you will be needing at least three of those kung gusto mo talaga siyang itry. And comparing it to disposable pads, it is definitely more expensive if you look at it on the lens of, let's say, you're only going to use it during this menstrual cycle. And additionally, menstrual cups are also way more expensive than disposable and reusable sanitary pads. If you are going to use them in the long run, because a menstrual cup usually costs more than 1,000 pesos. So that is something these women consider. And also fear. Fear is a great factor. Like in most cases, they were afraid to try menstrual cups and tampons because it might get stuck down there. So, ayun. Another interesting thing that we found out while conducting the interviews was the fact that the majority adapts to their menstruating life very well because they see what their female family members are doing. So, one of them shared that when she was menstruating, dun ko siya talagang na-try myself. So, parang sinasabi lang ano gagawin ko, tapos I did it on my own. So, most of our respondents shared the experience, and it is something that they see as a natural thing and something that they celebrate. I would also like to highlight this response that we got when we asked about their basic knowledge on menstruation. So she said, well, it's a biological function sa female body, and at the same time, sa society naman, meron siyang kalakip din na meaning sa pagiging babae. Like for most societies, it's considered becoming of a woman. So regardless of age, if ever, once na nagkaroon ka ng menstruation, you're considered a woman and can do functions of a woman such as marriage, in other societies, marriage, childbearing, and so on. So based on her answer, it is very evident that menstruation is deeply connected to womanhood and how we embrace the changes and the possibilities that are made possible because we are menstruating women. So aside from it being very symbolic of us being women, I think it is also good to hear that despite the negative feelings some women may have towards menstruation, which is also part of our findings, which Trix will be discussing after, we can see that it can also be a celebration of becoming a woman and entering a new phase during menarche.
So, for the next slide, our findings, we summarized everything to five major themes. The first theme, Go with the Flow, explains that the basic source of knowledge regarding menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices of university students are from their female family members and from school. This is because we have learned that adolescents prefer to seek information from their female family members. We see these members as older and experienced individuals who we are comfortable enough to confide in, talk to, and ask questions. The next theme, It's a girl thing rather, is very on point. Menstruation is a girl thing and is very normal. University students view menstruation as a biological and natural process for women. It's science and something rooted from past discussed lessons in school that help most women to understand what is happening to their bodies and further gain factual information about it. Although these information can at times be different from what women learn from their female family relatives. Next is a bloody mess. This immediately gives us a dirty, unhygienic, and unsanitary vision of uncontrollable blood everywhere. But we're close enough because the third theme actually focuses on the negative attitudes attached to menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices. Menstruation has always been viewed negatively, and most women even consider it an inconvenience because it truly can be. Menstruation comes hand in hand with pain and discomfort and can cause physical and psychological distress among women. Accessibility over anything, although there is no particular research done here in the Philippines stating that disposable sanitary pad although there is no research study done here in the Philippines. Based on our finding, the fourth theme stated that disposable sanitary pads is the leading menstrual hygiene product in the country. It's accessible and available in grocery and convenience stores, unlike tampons and menstrual cups. Disposable sanitary pads are preferred by women across generations, which explains that women are not afraid to find out more about menstrual products they can use, but really decide with the availability and accessibility it covers. The fifth and last major theme, It Runs in the Blood, talks about the knowledge and menstrual hygiene practices of female university students and how they prefer to use products which their female family members use. This is due to the availability and familiarity these menstrual products have, in line with female students even seeking their female family members' advice when it comes to the products they use. And for the findings, that is all with the five major themes.
Now let us go to the next part, which is sharing our experiences during our research and our realizations after 2 years since conducting this study. We will go first to Raya with her recorded message.
So for me naman, sobrang relatable din ng topic namin. Like habang may nag-share sa amin, like always same factor na nangyayari habang nag-interview kami dati. And like, honored din kami kasi may mga na-interview kami noon na talagang honest about their experience and thoughts about their menstruation. And also, nakakatuwa din kasi open sila sa mga topics like sa pag-use ng alternatives such as the menstrual cups and tampons. So, yeah.
For me naman po, researching about menstruation has introduced me to alternative menstrual hygiene products which were alien to me before, especially menstrual cups. I remember I was very curious about it and was actively asking questions about it and reading about how to use it. And I remember connecting with my body more and being very excited to have my period every month because I was excited to get used to using menstrual cup. Another thing I've learned about um, from our research study, which I didn't know before, was the infection called toxic shock syndrome or the TSS. So it's an infection due to poor menstrual hygiene and irritation that occurs there. And I remember because I was also talking about menstruation to my grandmother, she shared her experience in using tampons before and she had TSS because it irritated her body fluids. And it's not for her. But I also have friends who are tampon or menstrual cup users too, and they are more comfortable in using it than the most commonly used disposable sanitary pads. And I think it's really a great experience to be able to research and talk about menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices freely.
For me, I always appreciated the fun and educational menstrual discourse we had with every participant and interviewee we talked to. We were bonding over menstruation that people would think oddly about, but it was such a fun experience because during those times I felt like I was understood and therefore empowered.
Personally, for me, from the study, each participant has their unique experience with menarche. That's what I observed most of the time. And each had their own way of handling it, and the rituals that were relayed to them was mostly from their mothers and grandmothers. And the first thing that most did was to introduce themselves to their grandmothers or any older female within their vicinity, like their teachers, their older sisters, and some their yayas. And interestingly, there was a mix of excitement and disgust from the participants when they discovered that they just had their menarche. In my case, I was excited because I was surrounded by my mother and older sisters when I had my menarche. But collectively, we all thought it was a huge milestone in our lives as women, and it marks the beginning of a lifelong journey of exploring the developing female body. And now let's go to the next part. Upon revisiting the research study, what we have realized, we will let Raya have the floor first for her recorded message.
It feels sad that this kind of topic isn't given much attention. We observe that many girls lack the knowledge about proper hygiene regarding menstruation and other alternatives that they may use when they get their period. In fact, it must be taught in schools so that these young girls may have an idea or may help them widen their knowledge about having menstruation.
For me, I realized yet again that the conversation on menstruation can actually revolve around empowering women rather than just all the negativity and discrimination society forces us to believe. This is what pushed us to create this research study in the first place for women to have a fun and educational menstrual discourse free from judgment and harassment.
It is a realization that I had when we conducted the research that is still relevant today after 2 years, and that is we need more studies on menstruation in the Philippines. And it's not only just on women's experiences, rituals, or beliefs, but we can also promote better menstrual hygiene and accessible menstrual products to women who cannot afford sustainable and safe products. Additionally, from this study, I realized that one's knowledge on menstruation is strongly reliant on women's mothers and their mother figures, wherein there are different interpretations and rituals connected to menstrual hygiene and practices. Menstruation and menstrual hygiene should be taught in schools, especially in prepubescent girls, along with a lesson about the reproductive system during health classes. Teaching girls how to use menstrual products and teaching boys not to be disgusted about this process would make a significant difference to these children when they grow up and become adults. to be adults.
For me, I realized that although negative thoughts are somewhat evident in the responses in dealing with their periods, upon revisiting our interviews, we've observed that their menarche experiences are almost always positive and triggers a happy memory. Most of them shared the feeling of entering a new phase of their lives as women who are capable of doing more things. And it made us remember our menarche experiences as well. And it's just so much fun to tell stories about how our unique experiences contribute to our collective understanding and perception that it is in menarche that we best celebrate our period and the endless possibilities of becoming a woman. So I think that that concept really highlights my experience in revisiting our study.
And hello to our viewers. Please send your comments and questions to Dignified Menstruation PH's Facebook page. Now, let us introduce our reactor for today. Si Beverly C. ay isang nanay na manunulat, tagsalin at copyright advocate. Aktibo si Bebang sa larangan ng publishing. Isa siya sa mga book champion at intellectual property ambassador ng ating bansa noong 2015. Siya ay nakalikha at nakapaglathala ng 11 aklat sa pamamagitan ng pagsusulat, pagsasalin, pagpapatnugot at pag-i-illustrate. Nalingkod siya sa naglilingkod siya sa ngayon sa Intertextual Division sa Patnubay ng CCP Cultural Content Department. Siya ay nakatira sa Bacoor, Cavite kasama ang kanyang asawa at mga anak. Maaari siyang makontak sa beverlyc@gmail.com. Ang ilan sa kanyang mga akda ay libreng mapabasa sa babe-ang.blogspot.com. Some of her books about menstruation are It's a Men's World, It's Raining Men's, Puki Usap, and Biyak as an Illustrator. To everyone, please prepare your questions for the speakers as Miss Bebang C, one of our reactors, has graced us with her presence. Let us now hear some insights from our reactor, Miss Bebang C.
Hi everyone, magandang hapon po mula po sa Sentrong Pangkultura ng Pilipinas. Binabati po namin kayo ng maligayang buwan ng kababaihan. Maraming salamat sa pagkakataon na makapagbahagi, no, at napaka-interesting ng research nila. Habang nakikinig ako kanina, na-realize ko yung sarili kong experience na totoo yung mga napatunayan ng ating mga researcher na sina Raya, Lauren, Trisha, and Jessa. Thank you sa inyong napakamakabuluhan na research na yung information at saka yung mga bagay na dapat gawin at hindi dapat gawin ay oo nga, nanggagaling nga siya sa mga female members of the family. No? Yun talaga yung pinaka-common at ngayon lang ako nakakita na at saka it's na gusto natin ito. So binabati ko ulit yung ating mga researcher. Ang ah ang nakakatuwa dito sa nangyari ay alam nyo yung experience ng researchers na ang kausap nila ay kapantay nila. No, yun yung yun para sa akin yung isa sa highlight ng kanilang ginawa. Walang hierarchy. No, walang hierarchy among peers, no, among peers yung pakikipag-usap tungkol sa menstruation. Ibig sabihin, meron silang agency, no? Meron silang ahensya, meron silang paraan para mapag-usapan ito, meron silang venue para mapag-usapan ito. So yun yung isa sa mga palagay ko na isa rin sa magandang outcome nung ginawa nilang research. 'Di ba? Kasi katulad nung kanina, pinag-usapan natin, yung source ng information galing siya sa female family members who I think and I believe are older than us, older than the person who is experiencing the menstrual ano 'no, yung menstrual period, 'di ba, yung menarche, sino ba yung mga kasama natin diyan? Usually ate, tiya, tita, nanay, 'di ba? So, lagi siyang matanda o sa hierarchy, yung naka-experience ng ano, mens, lagi siyang yung mas mababa. Tapos, sa school, of course, yung pinanggagalingan ng information, usually, kapag dinidiscuss yan sa paaralan, ay yung guro. 'Di ba? So, may hierarchy na naman. Kaya itong ginawa nila na research, maganda sa kanya, kasi yung pinanggalingan ng information ay kapantay nilang lahat, no? At, um, tapos naisip ko rin na napakaswerte ng henerasyon ngayon kasi dahil sa teknolohiya, no, yung internet, at saka yung mga social media, kasi hindi lahat ng babae ay nakakausap yung mga female family members, no, tungkol sa experience na to. So, ngayon na pwede nang ma-take advantage yung pagkakaroon ng mga virtual community, 'di ba, ng mga kababaihan, at posibleng ito rin yung panggalingan ng mga information patungkol sa menstrual experience. Ayun. So, marami akong natutuhan dun sa binahagi ni Lauren na yung menarche o yung unang menstrual experience ng isang babae, it's usually a happy event, a happy memory. So, nakakatuwa siya na malaman na ganun. Kasi at least kahit papano, hindi masyadong traumatic pala, no, yung ganyan. Kasi usually ang dugo ay na-associate syempre sa ano, 'di ba, sa violence, na-associate sa fear, 'di ba? Pero ito sa karanasan ng babae na dugo na bumula sa katawan niya, it's a happy memory pala. Yun. Ayun lang, yun muna ang aking masasabi patungkol sa pananaliksik nila. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Bebang, for your insights. And that was a very educational and empowering discussion on what it means to menstruate. We are now opening the floor for questions and other insights that anyone has for the speakers. Feel free to also message us by commenting or message us on the chat box. Again, we are opening the floor for any sort of question or insight with regard to what the speakers have discussed for us for today. Although I personally do have a question if you guys don't mind for the speakers. Hello. So I also have a question with regards to what you've discussed for us here today. So what do you think, out of all the major themes that you've discussed, which among them do you relate your personal menstrual experience to the most? And anyone can start off the question. I think
For me, I have to say it's a balance of the themes. It's a girl thing and a bloody mess, because I understand that menstruation gives value to my womanhood, sabi nga ni Lorian ganina, and something most of us women can celebrate. But at the same time, I have to mention the uncomfortable feeling the blood can give and the pain that goes along with it. The pain varies each month, but for me, it can still be quite a challenge.
Yung source of knowledge na nagaling sa female family members. Kasi most of what I know today about menstruation and menstrual hygiene is from my mother. I adapted a lot of her menstrual hygiene practices. And even though I have also learned about alternative menstrual hygiene products and have been using them, I think yung foundations ng knowledge ko about menstruation is really from my mother. So, ayun, I think doon ako.
For me, I relate to the first two themes, just like Lauren, which are about gaining knowledge from female family members. I might have mentioned this earlier, but most of the time I am with my mother and my older sisters who taught me about womanhood mostly. And it is really inevitable for me that I would adapt their menstrual hygiene practices and also prefer to use the products that they use.
Okay, very interesting insights from everyone, especially with the research you've conducted. We pick up a lot from the women in our family. And with that being said, there are questions coming in from the audience. So JCI Perlas Pasay, the page has asked, mayroon bang university students na gumagamit ng menstrual cup at tampon? And anyone can start off the question.
Yes, merong mga university students na gumagamit ng menstrual cups and tampons. I myself, I am a user of menstrual cup. Tapos, yung friends ko din, yung mga tampon users.
I see. It seems like there are students who use these kinds of products, so menstrual cups and tampons, as alternatives to menstrual pads, which is a very interesting perspective on how there are options with regards to how we should manage our menstruation as women. And there are more questions coming in on our Facebook Live. It seems that there is another question from the audience which asks, is there any respondent who experienced unpleasant situations with regards to their menstruation? So, can I actually ask Jeza Bagsit with regards to this or anyone?
So based from our interviews, we actually there are a good majority of our participants who experienced unpleasant situations. Most of them, since they experienced menarche at a very young age, like in elementary school, most of them had their menarche or discovered their menarche while they were in school. There were some that had their parang natagusan sila at school, and that's why I mentioned earlier that they approach their teachers first, or their school nurse, or if they have an older sister at school. Some of them natagusan sila sa school. Some of them natagusan sila in public. So um, that's I think that's also where their negative experience about menstruation rooted with it's their quote unquote trauma with during their menarche days.
I see. And it's actually very welcoming the fact that you are opening a discussion with regards to menstruation and how because you are formulating this safe space, less people will fear the stereotypes we've built around menstruation. So kudos to you guys. And more questions are coming in. There is someone who is asking, how can you encourage or empower younger women who are not experiencing menstruation? So, can I ask someone, let's say Trix Pena Flor, to answer this question?
It's actually a very difficult one, but I have to say, bilang babae, parang hindi, parang masyado kasi tayong na manipulate or na label as menstruating women, that when and menstruation goes along with, it's in line with pregnancy and being a mother, and that completes our womanhood. But for me, for us, we believe that learning more about menstruation and how it's not the only thing that is an important event or experience a woman has to go through, and that um, being ready about it, being educating women about it early on during their childhood um, will let them understand what happens in their body. And if ever that doesn't happen to them, it's okay kasi we're also educating them about it. Na hindi lang naman yun ang kailangan na mangyari sa isang babae to menstruate and to become a mother. There's so much more about being a woman, and giving them safe spaces to talk about it, at hindi mahiya na ganito lang ba ang trabaho ng isang babae, it's to menstruate, di ba? For them to understand na meron silang mga karamay sa experience na yun, na hindi nakakahiya ang maging part ng non-menstruating women. I think that can already empower them very well.
I loved what you said about how women shouldn't be limited to just one exclusively feminine experience because women have so many layers to them. And menstruation is just one of the many ways where women can empower themselves. And thank you for that. Thank you for shedding light onto that discussion as to what it means to also be a woman. And we have another question here. Okay, so in terms of researching about menstruation and menstrual experience, what else do you think should be explored, considering your research work? What else do you think should be explored when it comes to the experiences of menstruation? Let's go to Lauren Chua for an answer to this question.
I think very evident naman na there are only a few studies about here in the Philippines. Sa study namin, puro foreign literatures yung related list namin. So, I think there should be more research about menstruation and menstrual experience in the context of the Philippines. Particularly, I suggest into the state of public restroom access authority to menstruating women. Siguro yung menstrual experience ng mga um, babae sa paggamit nila ng public restrooms. Kasi pwede natin itanong yung mga kung meron bang available na menstrual hygiene products for them. Tapos, is the water clean enough? Ganun. And if we assess these public restrooms, we can evaluate its effectiveness and significance to the public, especially to menstruating women.
I love how you answered that question, considering that there are so many things that have yet to be explored with regards to our identity as women, and menstruation is just one of the ways of trying to see each aspect of the experience in order to help us build our identity as women. And because of that, because of your research work and what you've done here so far, what do you guys recommend to other researchers for further studies in terms of exploration? So we can go to Jeza for the beginning of how to answer this question.
For me, I've said earlier that aside from like the beliefs and also the practices, which we have already explored, I suggest other researchers to do more research on menstruation about its more scientific approaches, like accessible menstrual products, and how to reach this kind of information, like how to distribute this kind of information to those who are in the rural places, and just to teach, not really taking away their knowledge about menstruation, um, like but sharing these scientific discoveries about menstruation and the use of menstrual products to those who cannot access it, like for example people living in the mountains or in rural areas, um, and just sharing what they should do to like to safely take care of their reproductive system, but not really erasing their cultural practices and their cultural beliefs. Just teaching them how to um, do it more safely, and also not to promote any kind of infection or something like that. It's just more on focusing on the scientific side of menstruation and how it can reach people who do not have access to these kinds of information.
Mm. And Trix, may you please also share your input?
Okay. For me, I guess we could also learn more about the cultural differences Filipinos have from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. It can vary with how they connected to their menstruation and menstrual hygiene practices, dealing with the blood and pain and the different points of view on all menstrual products. Despite sticking to university students, because of the varying locations, the approach can all be different from one another. Taking these into account and further studying it can also help with creating informative studies that we need more in the country, while letting more people, menstruating or not, be also more aware about menstruation and all the things surrounding it.
Mm. Miss Lauren, may you grant us the pleasure of a penny for your
Uh,
thoughts?
recommendations to other researchers no, for further studies.
Mm-hmm.
No, yung kanina kong sinabi na sana mag-delve into um, public restrooms kasi I think yung menstrual hygiene natin sa Pilipinas ma-assess din if we look into that aspect.
Mm, I see. Okay, and we have another question coming in. Is it important to prepare young women for their menarche? We can start with Lauren
Uh,
for this question.
yes, I think it is necessary to prepare young girls for their menarche. The basic concept of menstruation and hygiene so that they know how to take care of their bodies and know why this process is a natural thing in their body. If they acquire a solid foundation in their childhood, I think they will be more open to conversations about it and really empower them as women.
May anyone like to continue off of Lauren? Let's say Trix.
Okay, for me, I think girls as young as 9 can, we all know that girls as young as 9 can already experience their menarche, which is why we should educate and prepare girls as young as 5, 6, or 7 for what is to come for the most part of their lives, something they will experience for so many decades to come. Because it's like preparing elementary students for high school students for college, and college students to have a successful career. It's a life changing leap. No young woman should go through all alone and confused. If it's something to be celebrated about, then we should let these young women understand why, despite menstruation being related to blood, it is blood, it's actually not related to death. Rather, it makes us feel even more alive. I believe so.
I see. So, Miss Jeza, a penny for your thoughts?
Um, I've said earlier that we should. What I realized from this study is that we should also educate young children about menstruation, and it is vital for them to learn about it and the other changes that will also happen to their bodies when they hit a certain age to prepare them for what will come in the future. And it is also like a way to train them on how to take care of themselves and the reproductive system, promoting a safe and sex positive environment.
Mm. It's very significant the ways that you presented how menstruation, how someone as young as maybe 9 years old can prepare for their menarche. And with that being said, how do you plan to use the information you've collected in your own career paths or in your own field?
For me, aside from my major European studies, I'm currently taking a minor program in film, and I think I could talk more about menstruation in film, to be honest, than European studies. But of course, European studies also focuses on female theories and a feminine theory and how gender is an important topic. But in film, I would like to if ever become a filmmaker in the future, create more films about women, children, menstruation, and the body of a woman, because it's not, there are some films about menstruation already out there in Philippine cinema, but I would like to let more people know more about it, let it become mainstream, let people be aware and understand that menstruation shouldn't be a taboo topic. It's a part of our daily lives. Women go through it all the time. It's normal. It's a part of our reproductive system. It's science. Like I said, it's a girl thing. It's something so natural, and also like I really like the question before and how to empower non-menstruating women, create films that also tackles that topic, because if we create films about these things and really let more people know about it, because film is a great medium for um, providing awareness on specific advocacies we have, and this right here, menstruation is an advocacy we have. It talking about it right now, presenting our paper, it's actually giving more awareness to menstruation, something that before was not always talked about. And for it to be represented in film, for women growing up, non menstruating or not, see themselves in those films and understand that menstruation being related to blood is shouldn't be something that we're afraid to talk about and see on a daily basis, because it happens to us naturally.
Very powerful, considering that we have had predecessors who have built the foundation of exploring themes of menstruation through their own media platforms, such as with Miss Bebangsi through her books and with films that also portray menstruation. It is time for us to continue the cycle of trying to break the stereotypes. And we have our last question for today, which is uh, did anybody talk about the pain and discomfort of menstruation? Nagagalit ba sila sa mens whenever they experience pain, considering it is a very painful process? Let's start with Jeza for this question.
That's that concern is what the majority of our participants had voiced out. Um, if they wanted to, if it is up to them, they said that they would not rather have menstruation, which is kind of saddening, but also kind of like, yes, I do relate to that because of dysmenorrhea, and some of them, I actually remember that some of them actually take hormone pills, hormone controlling pills, just to stop their menstruation, and to prevent any to prevent this experiencing dysmenorrhea for like a few months, just skipping menstruation. And that is also where the negative aspect of menstruation comes from, the discomfort that they experience during their menstruation, during the first days of menstruation, the dysmenorrhea, and also they cannot physically do anything, and especially when they experience severe dysmenorrhea, because if if you do experience dysmenorrhea, like um, when you menstruate, it is really impossible to move around and to do stuff, because your your attention is mostly focused on um, um, your is mostly focused on dysmenorrhea, and they do get angry, and they feel like if they cannot have menstruation, they would rather not have to experience any kind of pain like that.
Hmm. It's very the pain that you experience during menstruation is one of the things that cannot be explained in detail without receiving judgment from people. And it's great that you guys are opening a platform in order for this discussion to happen. And we have, considering the mention of it's a girl thing, we have a question here with regards to inclusion, and it asks, how do we include boys or men into these conversations, and how important is it for them to be included? Now, Miss Lauren, may you please answer the question we have right here?
Um, share ko lang, yung research advisor kasi namin, hindi siya babae. So, nagkaroon kami ng ibang perspective sa pagbuo ng research namin. So, nakatulong yun na hindi babae yung research advisor namin. Tapos, um, meron din kami kausap na expert in the field na, na babae. So, I think kapag diverse yung opinions and perspectives na nakakatulong sa'yo sa research, mas magiging malawak yung understanding mo with regards to menstruation. So, ayun, siguro important talaga na ma-include yung men sa conversations about menstruation. Kasi para makarelate, para hindi sila makarelate, pero para maintindihan nila kung ano yung pagdadaanan natin every month. So, ayun, siguro mas nagiging less yung stigma and nalilesen yung negative na pagtingin sa menstruation kapag include sila sa conversations natin.
Very,
I would sorry, I would
I
just
go.
like to clarify
Yes.
that when I said it's a girl thing, that was actually one of our five major themes because it
Mhm.
tackles the menstruation as a natural process for women. But I would also like to say that menstruation should be everybody's thing, although it doesn't happen to although it only happens to women. I would like men to be more aware about it. And so educating students early on, like even in elementary, let these students know not to talk about menstruation lightly, like it should be a part of the jokes. You know, it's not something to joke about anymore right now. And so if we educate women and men, even though it doesn't happen to men, if we let them know that this is a natural process for women, it's a girl thing that happens to them but should be everybody's thing, then it can be everybody's thing, although it doesn't happen to men. Them being aware about it and them understanding this biological event can let them understand and respect women, value women more, even, I believe.
Very commendable answers from the both of you, especially considering how, even though this experience, menstruation, is a very exclusive experience for women, we are also trying to include all other social groups into the conversation in order to truly achieve a space for everyone to talk about topics which we once dubbed as taboo or something that shouldn't be talked about. The fact that we are talking about menstruation already makes us women who are more empowered and dignified than before. And a huge thank you to our speakers, our reactor, the organizers, and to everyone who attended Conversation on Menstruation, the Filipinos perspective. And we also have here, to honor those who have given their time and wisdom for the event, the certificates of appreciation shall be awarded to the following. So these certificates are proudly presented to the following names. The certificate is proudly presented to Jeza Bagsit, Lauren Chua, Trixia Peña Flor, and Raya Sabandal for sharing their skills and expertise as speakers of the Dignified Menstruation PH Bloodstained, a study on the menstrual experience of university students in Metro Manila, signed by Amber Luminario and Junelin Medina. And next, we will also reward a certificate to Miss Beverly or Bebang C for sharing her skills and expertise as a reactor of the Dignified Menstruation PH Bloodstained, a study on the menstrual experience of university students in Metro Manila, signed by Amber Luminario and Miss Junelin Medina. I would just like to call on the speakers and the reactor in order for us to have a quick photo op for the event. Hello. May the people who have been called, those who are receiving the certificates, please turn on their cameras for a quick photo op. Okay, so Hello po. Okay, so one, two, three. Okay. And yes, thank you for turning on your cameras. You may now turn them off because the picture has been taken. So hello po. Okay, a huge thank you. Thank you for all the great insights and educational menstrual discourse. And because of this, to sum up this talk, I would like to quote the speakers when they had this to say about menstruation discourse. I felt like I was understood and therefore empowered. Thanks again, everyone. I would like to call on Miss Amber Luminario, Sustainability and Resiliency Advocate and pioneering member of Dignified Menstruation Philippines, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Riddle Alcantara, and thank you to all the speakers and to Ms. Bebang C for her reactions. Also, thank you to all the audience who joined us in this conversation. This is the part two of the conversation on menstruation, and we hope to have more conversations with you and to include men. Yes, thank you for that. And as a closing, we hope to invite everyone to support our research that we are initiating. It's more on the baseline research for menstruation here in the Philippines. So if you have research topics or if you want to support research studies about menstruation, please reach out to us or send us a direct message in our Facebook page, Dignified Menstruation PH. And there, we look forward to more meaningful and insightful conversations with you. Thank you very much. And may we all have a happy Women's Month and dignified days, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Miss Amber. And we would like to give appreciation for the time you've made to be present for this event. It is our pleasure just as much as yours. That's all, folks. We hope you have a great week ahead. Happy Women's Month, and good afternoon, good evening, and good night.